Hi, I just wanted to walk you through the spreadsheet basics that we went through in class on Monday to give you sort of an additional reference in case there's stuff you missed and you want to review. So first, to open Excel, it's under the Microsoft Office submenu, and it should open up a blank worksheet. The first thing I wanted to go over is entering data and entering data by hand. So the first thing we wanted to do was enter a set of numbers 1 through n, maybe 1 through 10. And we could do 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on by hand, but that can be sort of tedious, especially if you have more than just a handful of numbers. So I'm going to show you a trick. You can select a block of numbers that are in sequence, then go to the bottom right hand corner of that block and just drag them, and it will complete the sequence. You can see it inferred that I was going up by 1, and it went all the way and filled that column with the right numbers. I might want actually headers on this, and so I'm going to right click on this column and say insert, and it'll give me an extra row, so I'll just call this ID. Then we want to enter month of birth, and so I'm following month of birth, number of siblings, and then following that, distance from Houghton to the high school where you graduated. And just to get comfortable entering things by hand, you enter data into a cell, and if you hit tab, it moves you one cell to the right. So if I hit 3 and then hit tab, it moves me here, and maybe 100 miles. And now if I hit enter, it moves me down to the next column, so I can easily enter more data. So I hit tab, and let me enter a few more data lines. And then I want more data than this, but I don't want to enter it by hand. So a couple other things I want to show you about navigating around. If you hit the control key, it will take your, instead of using the cursor to move around, it'll take your cursor to the end of a contiguous block of data, or if you're outside a block of data, it'll take you to the next filled cell in that direction. So if I'm here and I hit control right, it takes me all the way to the right of the spreadsheet, and that can take me back really easily. So this can be handy for navigating around, but together with the shift button key, it's really useful, because if I hold the shift key down, it creates a selection that I can select. So in fact, if I hit the shift and control, it puts these two together. So that's one keystroke, that's another keystroke. Shift control down and then shift control left. So I want to make a copy of this data, so I'm going to select it like that, hit control C, hit control V. I'll make a few copies just so we have some stuff to work with. All right. So that's sort of part one. The next, I wanted to show how to enter simple formula, and especially using references. So you can make a reference to another cell by starting with the equals sign. You hit equals, and then you type the name of the cell. So if I did equals B2, it will then give me a reference to this cell. So the number here will be 12. It'll act like 12, but up here it tells me it's really just this formula B2, which refers to that. Now, this doesn't have to be in the same row or column. I could say equals B2 here, and it'll still give me the same reference. But the really handy thing about references is if I copy it and paste it, or it's either if I copy and paste with Control-C, Control-V, or I drag, it copies relative, not absolute. So these, rather than being B2 here, it'll be B3. And if you look at all of these, it dragged them all down by 1. And if I were to copy it to the right, it's going to be C2. So it's really copying the thing that's 3 to the left of whatever cell you happen to be in. Now, another way you can use the equal sign is for functions. And there are a lot of different functions available, probably hundreds, and you can get help with functions if you just click on this. But I know the function I want to use is called average. I want to find the average of a set of functions, a set of cells. So I'm going to type equals average, and then it accepts either numbers separated by commas or a range. You can specify a range with the colon. So I can say I want to find the average of C2 colon C16, and then close parentheses, and it tells me that average is 3. Let me adjust one of these so that we have sort of a non-integer average. So there's a lot of different functions you can use, and it makes Excel really powerful. But let's say I want to know if you have more or fewer siblings than average. Well, it's easy for this person because I can just say, well, I can just take equals and then put a formula in here. I can say the number of siblings and subtract the average. And it looks like this person is 0.06 siblings fewer than the average. But if I want to copy this to the whole group, I can't do that, because what happens is, if you look at, it copies that formula, but it copies them both relatively. So this one is looking for a number that out in nowhere. To do that, I need to anchor the column and the row. To anchor a row or column, you use the $ before. So if I want to anchor the column, I put a $ before the C, and if I want to anchor the row, I put it here. Now here, I do want to anchor the row and column because that's the cell I want to use it each time. And so now we can look at each person and see how many siblings do they have in comparison to the average, and it shows there. But let's say I want to do that to distance as well. I can copy this formula and paste it over here, and it gives me, the average distance. But if I copied this and pasted it over here, it's still comparing it to this guy. And so what I might want to do, instead of anchoring both row and column, is to anchor just the row. Because then, if I anchor just the row and I paste here, these numbers don't change. But now if I copy and I paste here, now if you look at the formula, it copies this reference over 1 as well. Okay, so that's the basics for references and how to anchor references. I showed you one little function. Another function that's going to be useful for the assignment is the if function. And the if function works like this. You type if, and then you need a logical test. And so you could use, like, is something equal or something greater than or less than as a logical test. So I'm going to try to figure out if you have more or fewer than the average number of siblings. And now that's easy to tell, because if it's positive, you have fewer than the average, and if it's negative, you have greater than the average. So I'm going to say if E2 is less than 0, and we will say small for a small family, large for a large family. Now if I take this formula and copy it, it has each person, whether they're in a large or small family. The second part of problem 2 had some examples where we did a number of functions together, putting them in separate cells to be able to calculate something more complicated. So the first thing it said is, put the year you were born, and maybe I was born in 1999, and I want to calculate how many years I would be if I were born in 1999. So let's make a formula, and we'll say equals 2013 minus, and I hit the arrow key to move over to that cell, 1999, and hit enter. Okay, so that says I'm 14 years old if I were born in 1999. And let's say I was born in July, so I'll put a 7 here, month, year, and so that's how many years. Now let's calculate what that is in months, and so I can say equals 14 times 12 for months. That means I'm 168 months. But now, since I was born in, it's the 9th month now, and since I was born in the 7th month, I want to calculate how many months in addition. So I'm going to do equals 9 minus 7. This will be positive if I were born before September, and it will be negative if I were born after September. And so I can take these two numbers and add them together to get the total months. So J3 plus K3 gives me that number. Now if I had a bunch of data, and 8th month, 1970, and so on, I can take this whole column, this whole row of data, and copy it, and then paste it like that, and I get that same calculation for everyone. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to show, I'll just get rid of this so it's not bothering us. I'm going to label these is sorting. Next time I'm going to show sorting. And if you want to sort data, it's usually useful to have this sort of ID thing so you can reconstruct its original order. But let's say I wanted to sort by all of these by the number of siblings. I could select this, and notice I want to be careful about not selecting this stuff down here, because that shouldn't be part of the sorting. And I can go to the data, and there's a sort option which says what do you want to sort by, and I want to sort by say num siblings, and from smallest to largest, and I can hit OK. And this happens also to sort by size. Doing this is handy because now I have all of the data of a like class together, so I can say, well, what's the average, I don't know, distance of large from Houghton of large families, and I can use that average again and say average of these three, and then I could do the same thing for small families, average, and get another number, and you can see now small, average, large, and this is the basics for most of the problems in the homework. Alright, so that takes us through basically 1 through 4 of the walkthrough we did in class, and it should have everything you need in order to complete the homework assignment. Thanks.